Yuji Itadori is about to fight Sukuna for the greatest and most climactic battle of all of JJK, the one that's been hyped since chapter 1 itself. And today I'll be explaining how Yuji has already won this fight, and I'll also be going over 4 insanely cool theories on what his curse technique could be, whether it's death painting related, stole related, Heian related, or cleave and dismantle. Trust me, I got some insane theories for this video. So if you're a Yuji fan, you're definitely going to want to stick around all the way until the end. So hey, do your boy solid and leave a like, it helps out a ton, thanks. And of course, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for a ton of consistent and quality JJK content. 90% of people who actually watch my videos aren't subscribed. So if you want to see a ton of crazy theories like this one, JJK spoiler video on some chapters, power scaling analysis, trust me, if you love JJK, you will not regret subscribing. And of course, thank you to the special members of the channel, Ever Aaron and That Guy Trey. Let's get into this Yuji video. So before I actually get into the 4 theories, I'm actually going to touch on why I think Yuji has already won. Now I should clarify that when I say fight, I kind of mean the overall battle. I actually think this is going to be a multi-fight sort of structured out story, right? So I actually do believe that Yuji is going to lose this first encounter, possibly lose a second encounter, but maybe he'll actually just win the third one. And if you're curious on what I mean, it's more akin to, let's say, Luffy who just fought Kaido. Kaido actually defeated Luffy a couple times. I think it was 3 or 4 times. He just actually knocked him out cold, and in some cases just outright won the battle. But of course, Luffy got up, he entered the battlefield again, and the fight thus began once again. I think it's going to be something like this, where whatever plan Yuji actually has with Higuruma, I actually think it's going to be working at first. It's going to succeed, where I think Higuruma is actually going to be taking Sukuna's curse technique away because you can't use violence in his domain, and maybe Sukuna's curse energy control will be a bit wonky as well, though because it's Sukuna, probably not. He's the god of Jujutsu, the strongest character in the series, but still, Sukuna losing his strongest arsenal, his cleave and dismantle, which is invisible to almost every other character in the series, bar 1 or 2, and it's also something that cannot be blocked as it can negate all durability. That would be a very big help in winning. And of course, I do think Yuji has that big advantage where he is actually just completely resistant to all of Sukuna's attacks. Now, it still do damage, like it would still hurt Yuji, but we know from the Gojo vs Sukuna fight that when Gojo was actually hit by his Hollow Purple, it did a lot less damage compared to how much damage it did to Sukuna. And this is because the Hollow Purple was made out of Gojo's own cursed energy, thus he actually had some resistance to it. It gave him some defense against his own attack. And I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Yuji is cloaked and just engulfed in Sukuna's cursed energy, so much so that he is no different from an actual finger itself. And because he is shrouded in Sukuna's cursed energy, he just by default will have a resistance to all of Sukuna's attacks. This can include physical attacks as well, since physical attacks are all amped by cursed energy. And I guess not the physical aspects of it, so the parts that don't include cursed energy, but any reinforcement that Sukuna adds, it would do less damage to Yuji compared to any other character in the series, other than Megumi, who's also soaked deeply in Sukuna's cursed energy, actually more than Yuji, but he's not relevant right now. And I also do think that just for the plot, Yuji has to be the one to defeat Sukuna. I mean, just narratively, it fits so well. I mean, whatever Yuji's past is going to be in Sukuna's. I've made a whole video actually on Sukuna's past and then also on Yuji's past very recently, actually 2-3 days ago, where it's possible that Yuji's either from his ancestry, though not a direct descendant of Sukuna. It's possible he's actually a reincarnation of the general that killed Sukuna. He's a reincarnation of his twin. Yuji could be a lot of things. But to just briefly summarize it, what I believe is that there is a 1,000-long-year beef going on of Yuji and Sukuna, where the words that Yuji actually told Mahito are very telling to Yuji and Sukuna himself, where Yuji said that even if Mahito changes forms or even if he changes his name, when he's reborn, Yuji will kill him. He will find him and end it. I think it's actually the same thing with Yuji and Sukuna. Sukuna has changed his name and his form from when he was a human. That's just what I'm assuming. I could be wrong on that. Where it's theorized that Ryomen Sukuna wasn't actually his human name, but his title after he transcended from humanity is now an evolved human where he's a mixture of a curse and a human like Tengen. And then of course for the same with Yuji, because Yuji, if he really is someone from 1,000 years ago, he would have changed his name and changed his body. Even after he's changed his name and changed his body, so he's not the same person as he was in the Heian Era, but he probably has the same soul or something like that. The fight is still going on. Even after 1,000 years, they're still trying to kill each other, and the 2 characters reflect so perfectly. They are such polar opposites. It is actually remarkable. Where everything Yuji stands for, Sukuna is the opposite. He opposes to all of his ideologies, and they clash together very greatly. Okay, now it's actually time to get into the 4 crazy theories that I really want to talk about. Usually with these theory videos, I usually go from the least interesting to the most interesting, but it's really funny because in this case, they're all actually very interesting, very unique, and I think they're all amazing. So the first one I'll start off with is Yuji is actually just using the powers of the death painting when he morphed his arm. Now obviously this would make sense since it's heavily, and I mean very heavily implied to the point that it may as well be confirmed, that Yuji actually ate the remaining 6 death painting wombs to gain their cursed energy, since he did say he'll eat anything, and then right after that he talks to Choso, where Yuji's actually sad saying, oh, Choso, you're brothers. But Choso says, no, it's okay, they'll live on with you. So Yuji did actually eat them to get their cursed energy. Now it'd be really cool if the death paintings actually currently exist inside of Yuji, kind of like how Sukuna did. The 6 of them are there. That would be very awesome. I really hope that's the case. I do believe it would be a missed opportunity if it isn't. KK has actually said in an interview in the past that if Yuji were to eat another cursed object or something along those lines, what would basically happen is either one or 2 things. Either A, it would just turn into cursed energy, or B, even if it does manifest manifests in Yuji's innate domain, Sukuna would just instantly kill them. Now it's possible that for the death paintings, it's just going to be option 1, where they're just going to turn into cursed energy, which would be pretty sad. But if it really is option 2, remember, Yuji doesn't have Sukuna inside of him anymore, so they would just be able to live inside of his innate domain and not worry about Sukuna just ending them there. And it may be possible that just beside the cursed energy buff that he got from the death paintings, he's actually able to access all of their cursed techniques. That is 6 blood manipulation cursed techniques right then and there. Now this would make sense why his arm actually changes and becomes veiny. Maybe he's using a blood manipulation curse technique to transform his arm, and we're just beginning to see the start of the transformation, or maybe he's going to fire something off from it, or maybe he's using the blood to actually harden his arm, and we're just seeing the beginning of the hardening to it, similar to how Choso actually hardened his body against Yuji. We actually saw it turn dark red. It was really cool when he did that, and it was actually his ace to defeating Yuji, where the hardening was so strong that Choso, who can't even take a couple hits from Yuji, was able to completely tank a punch from Yuji with the hardening. And this would just be one of 6 different abilities that Yuji may have if it really is the death painting theory. It would be so cool to see him utilizing his brother's curse techniques. Out of all the theories, personally, I actually hope it's this one. The next theory is that Yuji is actually using some sort of soul manipulation or whatever he learned from Yuki's book. Since we know that Choso actually gave Yuji the book on souls, and he said, this is all of Yuki's research on the souls, and I imagine Yuji's actually read up on it over the past month, since it's been a month since Choso has given it to him. And it'd be very weird if there was this entire half page or page of Choso handing him this book, explaining what it is. We see the book clearly in one panel, just for it to never mean anything. Even if the other 3 theories do come true, I do believe that this soul ability might just play an integral part to activating them or how he unlocked them, where maybe he actually tapped into his soul to awaken his latent curse technique, or maybe he's actually doing what Mahito's doing, and it'd be very cool because those two, again, similar to Yuji and Sukuna, they have very strong parallels. It's possible that Yuji may have learned to actually manipulate the shape of his soul, since as Mahito himself said, Yuji is well aware of the soul. And in case you guys aren't aware, there is this really cool Yuji theory where it goes that since the very beginning of the series, since chapter 1, Yuji has actually had some sort of soul related ability. It could be a heavenly restriction, or it could just be an innate ability where he can just straight up see the souls of people, similar to how Gojo can actually see the souls of people with his 6 eyes. The biggest evidence for this, you actually won't believe where it comes from, but it comes from when Yuji actually remembered Ozawa right away. Now it's such a sweet and wholesome moment, because even though she used to have different hair color, be shorter, and she had a bit more weight, which was the whole point of her character, you know, she was insecure about it, and people bullied her for it, which was a very sad backstory, where she had changed drastically. So she was taller, very skinny, her hair had actually gone orange, which I actually thought it was white for all these years until the anime came out. But yes, somehow Yuji just knows right away. But what if it's possible that he actually recognized her because he recognizes the shape of her soul? It doesn't matter if you change appearance, because he is someone who can see the souls, he will always recognize what your soul looked like. And there's also an equally comedic and funny explanation on why this has never been brought before. And the explanation is that since Yuji has actually had this as a kid, he's just assumed that everyone else has a similar ability, or everyone else can just see the souls, it's a normal thing. And because of this, he's just never brought it up with anyone. He thinks everyone else can do it. Is it very goofy? Yes. But does it also make sense? Surprisingly, yes. Like, it's a very silly theory, but it shockingly does make a lot of sense, and it would actually explain a lot of things that were said in the story. The next theory is that Yuji is actually just using cleave and dismantle, and the technique has finally been ingrained on him, just like Gojo had said all the way during chapter 10, where the only reason Gojo even thought Yuji had potential and even thought that it was worth saving his life was because he actually thought Sukuna's techniques were engraved in him. And yes, this was actually said by GEGE in an interview where he said the only reason he saved Yuta, Yuji, and many other characters, he says it twice back to back in the interview, he says he simply saved them because they had a lot of potential, or they were very strong or could be strong. That's simply it. And because he's Satoru Gojo and he can do whatever he wants, simply just stopping the execution or postponing it, that's basically just whatever to him. It's just one of his whims that he'll do to accomplish his goal of raising the next generation. Now this theory is the one that's most likely to be true, and this is because Yuji's arm looks eerily similar, and I mean just very similar, to Sukuna's arms when he was in Yuji's body. If you remember back in chapter 1 and 2, quite literally the veiny hands and especially the fingertips where it's very sharp that Sukuna has when he first went into Yuji's body, it looks remarkably similar to Yuji's hand right now. So it's possible that either somehow he's manipulated his soul, so going into the second theory, to awaken the ingrained technique on his soul, but it's also possible that the technique was always there, but he was just never able to access it because Sukuna wasn't letting him use it. And we actually see Sukuna does say this when he's getting attacked by Angel, where he says that the only reason Hana is able to use Angel's abilities is because they're living symbiotically. And he actually makes a comment that Yuji would have been able to use Cleave and Dismantle in his base had Sukuna and Yuji just been on good terms, or if they just lived symbiotically, similar to Kurama and Naruto. And that's very cool to think, since we know that Hana just permanently has the angel wings in her base as well. So can you just imagine in a hypothetical world where, let's say Sukuna was a good guy, right? Just ignoring that would completely ruin the story, right? If Sukuna's a good guy. Let's be honest, Jujutsu Kaisen would be nowhere near as good as it is. But if he was, and Yuji and Sukuna were living symbiotically and Sukuna let him use his powers, Yuji in his base would actually always have the Sukuna tattoos 24/7 and he'd have those Rinnegan ring eyes that Sukuna always has. Can you just imagine casual Yuji all the time? He's just got those tattoos and eyes. That would be awesome. That would have been so cool to see. At least the design wise, I think it's really cool. But the point being is that now that Sukuna's gone, we saw that Yuji got a ton of Sukuna cursed energy the moment that Sukuna left, right? He got a massive amp. Now, it's actually debatable on whether it's an amp because of whatever Kenjaku did with him in the past, maybe it's a reincarnation, or if it's a Sukuna cursed energy amp, or maybe it's actually a combination of both. Regardless though, it does seem like he got a lot of Sukuna cursed energy the moment Sukuna left, so it's possible along with that, now he can actually use Sukuna's cursed techniques since Sukuna can no longer hold him back. And yes, this would include the fire arrow since that's engraved on him too. Or it could be that he actually just ate a finger, specifically the one that Gojo was hiding. Now I've previously theorized that maybe Yuji was actually created from this finger. That is actually a very popular theory that's been in the community for a very long time, where when Kenjaku was actually creating Yuji, he used the finger to create the baby Yuji as an embryo or fuse them or something like that. It's this whole theory, but it's possible that's not true at all, and that Yuji really is just a regular kid, or at least as regular as you could be with whatever reincarnation or incarnation he is, right? Whatever Kenjaku did with him. And he actually just ate the Sukuna finger that Gojo had over the time skip, and then he was basically training to use that power. So maybe that's why he's going to be able to use Cleave and Dismantle if that's what's going on in the final page. And the last theory is that Yuji is actually just using a Heian power, whatever his original Heian powers were, whether he was Sukuna's twin, so maybe that's why he can use Cleave and Dismantle if that's what's going on. Maybe the hand is actually a technique that we've never seen before, so it's none of what I stated before, and it's just something brand new that we never could have predicted. Well, I guess I'm kind of predicting it now, aren't I? Where it's basically just his Heian powers which he somehow unlocked. I guess maybe he manipulated his soul and accessed the innate technique in the soul, if that's even possible. I feel like this theory is the one that would be hardest to explain, or the one that a lot of people aren't going to be seeing coming, if it really is the case that it's just some Heian power that he has all the way back from 1,000 years ago. Unless, like I said before, the Heian power is just Cleave and Dismantle because he was Sukuna's twin or brother, so that would be actually predictable. A lot of people would predict that. Or maybe it'd have to do with his royal ancestry, right? Since I do believe, as I've talked about in my recent Yuji Past Theory video, where I believe he actually has royal blood, so maybe he's accessing some of that. It's a royal technique he got from his father and grandfather. Since it seems like they were actually sorcerers, the Heian theory actually gives the most leeway for GEGE to do whatever he wants. He could just slap any technique onto Yuji and say, oh, it was his technique from the Heian Era. But hey, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, it helps out a ton. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for a ton of consistent and quality JJK content, a ton of crazy theories like this, JJK spoiler videos on chapters when they come out, analysis, power scaling, because like I said in the beginning, only 10% of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you love JJK, trust me, you will not regret subscribing. And of course, thank you to all the channel members as well. It is much appreciated. Thank you guys very much. And that's all from me. Take care and have a nice day.